Elon Musk is a white supremacist. If you don't know that, you're either not paying attention, you're viewing him through rose-colored glasses because you like him, or you don't know what the definition of a white supremacist is. I'm Dara Starr Tucker, and this is The Breakdown. Don Lemon recently conducted an hour-long interview with the owner of All Things X, and in it, he really grills him on his stances on a variety of issues. Though Musk seems to have a lot to say about race on the platform that he seems hell-bent on destroying, he really didn't seem that eager to discuss his statements on the Great Replacement theory, the huge spike in right-wing hate speech on his platform, his attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or his statements about the supposed woke mind virus. Musk was raised mostly by his father in apartheid South Africa. Apartheid was a system of laws and regulations that governed South Africa from the 50s through the 90s. Apartheid codified racial segregation into law with a strict system of rules that governed the movements of Black people. The minority white government controlled where Black people lived, where they could work, even where they were allowed to be at certain times. They drove Black and colored people off of lands that were designated as whites only, and they created regions called Bantustans where non-white people were forced to live. Black people had their South African citizenship stripped away, and they were not allowed to participate in elections. They created educational segregation where each racial grouping had to go to their own schools and colleges, and they made interracial dating and marriage illegal. And the Indemnity Act of 1961 made it legal for police officers to commit acts of violence and to torture and kill people with total impunity. So that's the environment that Musk grew up in. It would have been nearly impossible for him to have any close friends or associates who were Black or brown. He was taught that Black and brown people were inferior, to the point that a whole system of laws had to be created to keep him separate from them. And this clearly informs a lot of the ideas that he embraces now that he's become the richest man in the world. You would think that someone like him would have taken advantage of the opportunity to expand his worldview over time, but he seems to be growing more and more entrenched in his provincial mindset where race is concerned. All this makes you wonder what his upbringing must have been like. Well, we're getting more glimpses into the factors that shaped him as time goes on. In that interview with Don Lemon, he attempts to distance himself from conspiracies like the Great Replacement theory. He's not happy to be answering a lot of Don's questions around these topics, but he's getting through the interview okay. But towards the end, Don asks Elon why he blames advertisers for bringing down the value of X, when, as Don points out, Musk himself should be ultimately held responsible for this decline, since he insists on making his controversial viewpoints known. It's at this point that Musk grows visibly uncomfortable and starts saying he needs to leave, and then he sort of blurts this out unexpectedly.
And I had a tough childhood.
Elon Musk has given a few vague insights into what this difficult childhood was like in past interviews. As a child on the spectrum, he was bullied endlessly. After his parents broke up when he was 8, he chose to stay with his father in Pretoria, South Africa. He later said that this was a mistake. His father, Elon Musk, is an engineer turned real estate developer who married and had children with his stepdaughter. He was reportedly abusive to Musk's mother, and he treated Elon and his siblings horribly. In a 2017 interview with the Rolling Stone, Elon Musk describes his father as a terrible human being. But one thing Elon seems to have in common with that terrible human being is the belief that if he and others like him don't commit themselves to having as many children as possible, there will be a total civilization collapse. 78-year-old Elon Musk is the father of 7 children, 3 with Elon's mother, May, 2 with his ex-wife, and 2 more with her daughter. His youngest is just 2 years old. He says that men need to be having as many children as possible, and that if he could find another woman under 35, he'd happily have more children. This echoes what seems to be Elon's philosophy around single-handedly repopulating the Earth. Elon, who has 10 children that we know of, has made no secret of the fact that he feels that people aren't having enough children. But not just anyone should be having children in his estimation. According to him, too many good, smart people have been told that the population growth is out of control and they aren't having enough babies. And while the world's overall population is not growing nearly at the rate that it was during the population boom of the 20th century, the idea that this represents an imminent risk to society is completely unfounded. The truth is that while the population in places like Europe, South Korea, and Japan are rapidly declining, the population in sub-Saharan Africa will almost double by 2050. India's population will grow by over 250 million people in that time. They'll eventually surpass China as the most densely populated country in the world. So it's not that people aren't having enough children, it's that the right people aren't having enough children, according to Musk. This all goes back to something called the Great Replacement Theory that's repeated often by members of the far right.
There is an attempted cultural genocide going on in America right now. The left wants us to be ashamed of America so that they can replace America.
It used to be a fringe theory, but thanks to folks like Tucker Carlson and platforms like Elon's Twitter X, the theory is being mainstreamed quickly. It all rests on the idea that immigration policies are intentionally being loosened to facilitate the browning of traditionally white countries. Proponents of this conspiracy theory will often use language that refers to undocumented immigrants as invaders and broadly cast them as criminals who must be feared and driven out. A quick perusal of Musk's X feed shows you just how much time he apparently spends thinking about how brown the country that he immigrated to is becoming. When he's not boasting about how his companies are supposedly saving the world, he's reminding you that the illegals are invading in record numbers and must be stopped, at the same time that he's warning against dwindling population numbers and telling all the smart people to have more children. Yeah, something's not adding up. Now, there's no doubt that his right-wing political leanings have a lot to do with his fear of the wrong kind of people becoming a majority in this country. The video that he recently pinned to the top of his Twitter X account lays this out with just the right amounts of alarmism and disinformation.
The Democrat open borders plan to entrench single-party rule, explained in under 2 minutes. 1. Flood the country with untold millions of illegals by land, sea, and air from all over the world. Enough to eclipse the populations of 36 individual U.S. states so far.
But to attempt to separate the political fears from the racial ones is really a fool's errand. The political aims that people like Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk are trying to preserve are inextricably tied to their beliefs around the superiority of white people. And of course, their concerns about preserving the patriarchy, heteronormativity, and national identity are wrapped up in there as well. For further insight into Musk's views on the outdated eugenics theory, I would suggest watching a video produced by my friend Garrison Hayes for Mother Jones magazine called "Elon Musk Keeps Spreading a Very Specific Kind of Racism." All of the indicators for Elon Musk's very obvious white supremacist views are right there in plain sight. He's made his platform into a safe haven where like-minded people have felt free to gather and affirm each other's views while sending the reports of hate speech on that platform up to 3 times what it was before he took over. He recently sued the watchdog company that reported on this and lost. But it's important to be able to recognize and call out white supremacist ideals wherever they appear, regardless of how they may be repackaged, reworded, or reframed for a new generation. And it's important to expose them for what they truly are, regardless of how rich and powerful the people disseminating those ideals may be. If you'd like to see more breakdowns like this, you can support my work by joining my Patreon at the link in my bio or in the comments.